Today, you and I are looking at a brown leather bag sitting alone on bench 7 near Harlow Green Park's East Gate. No name tag, no address. Just a tiny gold clasp and the lingering scent of high-end perfume carried away on the late afternoon breeze. Isaac Ward picked it up with the tough, calloused hands of a man who had spent 4 years fixing up things that everyone else completely ignored. He never planned to keep the bag. He never even thought about opening it. His only goal was to find the owner and return it untouched. But when the guard at the Cross Meridian Tower made him open it for a security check, and Isaac spotted what was hidden inside, he knew right then that this evening was far from over, and that nobody in town would ever view the billionaire Evelyn Cross the same way again. Isaac Ward wasn't the kind of guy anyone paid attention to. He wore a washed-out blue Parks Department work uniform daily, thick rubber work boots and a folded cloth handkerchief shoved in his back pocket, though not just out of habit. It was because his little boy Eli got nosebleeds from running hard, and Isaac knew to always keep something handy. It was nearly 6 p.m. on a chilly Wednesday in late October. The final few guests had left Harlow Green Park an hour earlier, leaving behind scattered juice boxes, a dumped plastic toy shovel by the sandbox, and that deep silence you only feel in massive open spaces when the sun sets. Isaac walked down the east trail holding a garbage grabber and a heavy canvas bag, inspecting every single street lamp exactly like he did every night before clocking out. He wasn't rushing. He never rushed through anything. Stick with me here. He was the kind of guy who gave everything or nothing at all. Eli sat on the low concrete steps by the tiny maintenance shack near the park's edge, right where he always waited after finishing school. He was just 7 years old, sporting a big gap between his front teeth and a bad habit of gnawing on the back of whatever pencil he grabbed. That afternoon, he was sketching inside a spiral notebook, pushing his pencil so hard the marks bled through onto the next page. Right beside him on the dirt, rolling across the rough concrete, was a tiny blue toy car, the exact same gift his mom bought him the Christmas before she passed. Isaac glanced at his watch, 5:47. The Farrell Street corner market locked up at 6. He did some fast math in his head: milk, bread, maybe an apple for Eli's lunchbox. He'd have exactly enough cash if he just skipped his usual morning coffee on the way into work. He had been doing that exact same math for 2 whole years. He gave up throwing pity parties about being broke after the first 3 months. There was simply way too much else to manage, and feeling sad just swallowed up all the precious hours he desperately needed for surviving. Diana lost her life on a cold Tuesday morning in November 2 years back. A bad highway crash on the eastbound overpass, totally not her fault, nothing she could fix. She was only 30 years old. Isaac spent her final 3 months living in that hospital room, sitting on a stiff plastic chair by the glass, reading out loud from whatever cheap paperback Eli left on the nightstand. And when she finally passed, he simply took his boy home. You and I know true heartbreak, but Isaac looked at his son's face that morning and forced his grief into the shadows rather than the center. He had a hungry kid who needed breakfast. Rent was due. He had a park to go clean up. You and I know why Isaac kept going. He had a son beside him who needed him to keep pushing forward, a reason as honest as breathing. Isaac had not returned to park bench number 7 since that tragic afternoon. His wife Diana sat there with little Eli last summer. She was still healthy then, feeding pigeons and sipping lemonade from paper cups. He passed that bench every single night on his final sweep, never once sitting down. Some memories you only keep safe by staying a careful distance away. But that evening, just before clocking out, Isaac spotted the abandoned bag. It sat perfectly upright on the wooden slats of bench number 7, positioned so neatly, like its owner had just set it down, planning to return any second. A rich brown leather tote, the kind of luxury bag built by folks who know real wealth never has to shout. A heavy little brass tag hung from the handle, roughly the size of a card. Isaac read the engraved name E. Cross, Cross Meridian Foundation. A phone number sat right below it. He grabbed the tote heavier than it looked. Little Eli popped up beside him. "What is that, Dad? Someone left it." Isaac murmured. "Is there money in it? It is not ours." Isaac answered flatly, "So we do not even count it." He hauled the heavy designer bag to the shed, carefully logging the date and time, and then dialed that fancy brass tag's phone number. It rang twice before kicking over to a recorded voicemail. Isaac hung up. He spotted the main number for the Billionaire's charity on a faded community flyer pinned right to his bulletin board. The foundation had funded the new water fountain by the West Gates. He dialed the line. A stiff receptionist answered. She took his details and the bag's description, using a tone that made it perfectly clear she was doing him a massive favor by staying on the phone. She claimed the corporate office would reach out in the morning and told him to bring the item down himself to prove his identity. Isaac politely thanked her, jotted down the fancy address, and hung up. Eli was already fast asleep, curled up on the beat-up sofa in the corner by the time his dad finally finished the lost and found paperwork. A little blue toy car tucked safely under his arm. Isaac sat in the silence, staring across the room at that heavy leather tote now locked securely inside his metal cabinet. Later that night, the shed's main phone actually rang twice before midnight. Both times, the mystery caller left nothing. Let's look at the Cross Meridian Tower, standing tall at Wentworth Avenue and 53rd Street. 40 stories of cold glass and steel, reflecting the clouds like it owned the sky. Totally immovable, as if this whole city had been built entirely to serve the building. Isaac showed up the next morning wearing his only clean, non-uniform outfit. A simple white shirt, neat black pants, and the good leather shoes he kept strictly for court dates and rare school events. He brought young Eli along. Since the morning sitter canceled last minute, and they had nobody else. This lobby was built purely to make working-class people feel incredibly small. Spotless white marble floors that echoed every single nervous footstep. 2 security guards in dark suits stood watching, keeping their hands clasped tight in a stiff, highly practiced stance. A giant front desk carved entirely from one slab of pale stone. Eli reached out to touch a massive polished column near the doors, quickly yanking his hand away when the surface felt freezing cold. The firm's receptionist asked Isaac his name 3 times. She dragged out each word, testing to see if this poor man would crack and change his story. Then she pointed me away. I dragged my boots toward a cheap armless chair shoved against the lobby's far wall. Right by the trash bins. It was separated from the wealthy guests by an unspoken rule about where a working guy like me belonged. I sat down and Eli sat beside me. My son pulled some scrap paper from his coat and started doodling to pass the time. Before the billionaire owner appeared, a different guy stepped out of the elevator. He looked about 44 years old, with his hair combed perfectly flat and a Patek Philippe watch flashing on his left wrist every single time he moved an inch. His dark charcoal suit fit perfectly. It had that flawless tailoring you only get when you've worn pure luxury your whole life. He strode across the marble lobby with the sheer confidence of a guy who never watches where he steps, knowing the rest of the world will just scramble out of his way. I would soon find out his name was Jason Holt, the chief financial officer for the massive Cross Meridian Foundation. Jason stopped right in front of me, eyed the designer handbag, then sized me up. "Thank you for coming in," he told me. His tone was perfectly polite but completely hollow, the kind of fake warmth a corporate guy uses when he's just acting human. "I'm the CFO. Ms. Cross is buried in back-to-back meetings all morning long. I am authorized to collect her personal property right now." He held out his right hand. I just stared at his empty palm. I stayed firmly in my seat. "Look, you and I both know what's right," I told him politely. No apologies, that Evelyn Cross owned this bag and I was handing it to her directly. I told him I'd wait. Jason kept smiling, but his eyes suddenly turned dead cold. "You're a city parks worker?" "I am," I told him. "And you know exactly where you are?" "Yes," I said. The elevator chimed open. Evelyn Cross marched through the lobby in a navy dress, moving exactly the way powerful people move when their time is the most valuable thing in the room. She looked 35, dark hair, with the stiff, perfect posture of someone who was raised to believe she ran the whole world. She glanced at the luxury handbag I was holding, then scanned my dirty work clothes. Her icy expression gave absolutely nothing away. I stood up and handed her the bag. She took it. She just said, "Thank you." Just 2 cold words. Her eyes were already locked on her busy schedule as she spun back toward the elevator. But right as I let go, the bag's inside zipper snagged on my heavy work thumb and pulled open just a crack. A folded piece of paper slipped loose and hit the cold marble floor. I scooped it up to return it, But the heavy elevator doors had already clamped shut, hiding her. Jason quickly held out his palm. I dropped the folded document right into it. He creased it once and shoved it deep into his suit pocket without even glancing down. Stick with me, because this is the crazy part. In that split second, I'd already caught the first 3 words printed on that page. 3 bold words in all caps: confidential board audit. Eli tugged my worn coat sleeve. Can we leave? I'm hungry. Yeah, I told him, let's go. Riding the city bus, with my boy sleeping on my shoulder, I just stared out the dirty glass window in total, stunned silence. I wasn't obsessing over those explosive corporate secrets stamped at the top of the page. I was desperately fighting not to think about them. The real truth, you and I both know it, when I locked that bag up last night, that hidden inside zipper was already pulled open from the heavy contents shifting around all day. Listen, he never even meant to look. He only reached in to fix the zipper, but doing that revealed everything scattered against the bag's expensive silk lining. A designer leather wallet, a cheap burner phone with a shattered screen, a sealed white envelope and a thin blue folder resting open, exposing the top page. He hadn't tried reading the private document. He never touched it, but the folder lay wide open, the bold text glaring back, and you and I know human eyes don't have shutters. They just absorb whatever sits right in plain sight. One single figure, $47,200,000. And scrawled next to it in red ink, unauthorized transfer. Authorized by Jason Holt. Isaac immediately zipped it shut and locked the cabinet. He convinced himself it wasn't his problem. He was just a park groundskeeper raising a son. He kept honest work, paid his rent on time, and raised a boy who still smiled. He wasn't risking his family's peace over some shady corporate secret he accidentally stumbled onto. But riding the bus home, he remembered that Cross Meridian Children's Health Initiative logo, the one he stared at every single day for 3 years, taped it to the pediatric ward wall at St. Albans Medical Center. He recalled the morning a kind nurse pulled him aside and whispered to him that a secret charity grant from the Cross Meridian Foundation fully paid off his late wife's final hospital bills. He never discovered who authorized that financial rescue or why. He was just profoundly thankful, the kind of raw gratitude you only feel when you have absolutely nothing left to give back. $47,000 from a children's charity. He watched his little boy asleep against his shoulder, clutching a tiny blue toy car. Sometimes you see something wrong, Isaac whispered to the empty air. And you have to decide if you'll just pretend you didn't. 2 quiet days passed. Isaac worked his honest shifts, raking dry elm leaves off the Eastern Park Trail. He fixed a shattered wooden plank on the footbridge and officially signed out on his October maintenance logs. Little Eli sketched inside his spiral notebook and baked for French toast that Thursday. He got it that morning because Isaac managed to grab 6 eggs on sale. By Thursday afternoon, a wealthy-looking man showed up outside the tool shed. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket and his collar hung open. We've all seen guys like this, rich, but dressing down to look casual. Isaac instantly recognized his face. Jason Holt took a seat on the nearby wooden bench. He waited in silence until Isaac dropped his gear and met his gaze. "What exactly did you see in that luxury bag?" Jason asked casually. That casual tone was the real danger. "I just returned your bag," Isaac replied. "That's the entire story." Jason paused. "I think you might have spotted something you weren't supposed to see." "I'm not accusing you, just asking." Isaac stood there, saying absolutely nothing. Jason pulled a thick white envelope from his coat, setting it on the bench between them. $15,000, he said, "for your household expenses, for your boy. No conditions, no strings, no paper trail. You don't need to do anything. You just have to keep quiet. Just go on living your life." Isaac stared at the cash, then at Jason. "Watch closely here." Isaac refused to touch the bribe. Jason simply left it and leaned back. And then, dropping his voice to a cold whisper, the billionaire named the exact elementary school Eli attended. He casually dropped the exact bus number little Eli rode home every Tuesday and Thursday. He pointed out that Isaac's evening shift ended at 6, and the maintenance shed sat right in a blind spot, completely hidden from the city's camera grid. He never framed any of this as a threat. He stated the facts coldly and clearly, simply to prove to Isaac that he knew them. Isaac pushed himself up slowly. His grip tightened on the heavy pruning shears he had put down just minutes ago. You just told me everything I needed to know, Isaac replied. Jason grabbed the envelope. The man strolled out through the east gate exactly how he arrived, never once hurrying. Once alone, Isaac pulled out his phone. He searched the city portal, scrolling straight to the Cross Meridian Foundation's official staff directory. He spotted the name Grace. Adler, executive assistant to the CEO. He dialed the main line. He asked for Grace directly, leaving a firm message when her voicemail beeped. He stated his name clearly. He had to speak with Evelyn Cross herself. This wasn't about her luxury bag. It was about the corporate heavy who visited after he returned it. That night, Isaac double-checked the deadbolt. Little Eli watched his father quietly from across the small kitchen. "Are you scared, Dad?" "No," Isaac replied, testing the heavy bolt once more. "I'm just being careful. Big difference." The next morning, Grace heard the voicemail. She marched it straight to Evelyn Cross, right before the billionaire's first scheduled meeting. Evelyn scanned the name, read his exact message, and set the paper down. Silence filled the luxury office. Then she read it again. She had been sitting on that explosive audit report for 6 weeks. Let's look at this together. She was carefully building a trap for a man who controlled every single system and employee inside her massive organization. Moving slowly, quietly, gathering evidence from the outside in. That blue folder inside her lost bag? Just a working draft of the internal financial audit. Not the original document. The original file was already locked safely off-site with the Foundation's independent legal team. She never planned on losing her handbag. She certainly didn't expect a stranger to return it, let alone with its contents untouched. Grace returned later with a background check on Isaac Ward. Evelyn just sat there, completely speechless. Isaac Ward, 31, City Park's groundskeeper for 4 years, holding an absolutely flawless record. Widower, wife Diana Ward tragically deceased 2 years prior. Cause fatal car crash on the eastbound overpass, a Tuesday morning in November. The other vehicle was a Cross Meridian Foundation company car, driven by an outside contractor heading home from their lavish autumn gala. The contractor's blood alcohol level hit .14. The Foundation's high-paid legal team quietly arranged an out-of-court settlement within 6 weeks. Isaac accepted the modest settlement check. He never chased them for further legal action. And the corporate executive who processed and stamped that very payout for the Foundation, Jason Holt. Picture this. Evelyn sat completely frozen. She had signed that final settlement summary herself. She vividly recalled the document number, the date, and the dollar figure. She never actually knew the deceased woman's name. She had not even bothered to ask. Just another line item in a quarterly risk assessment. Jason handled all the dirty work, and she blindly signed her name. This man had a real, permanent, agonizing reason, an irreversible reason to hate her company. But as we'll see, his honesty opened doors money couldn't. Let's trace this honesty. He returned the bag unopened, leaving a note not complaining, but warning the billionaire that someone inside her own empire was pressuring him into absolute silence. Evelyn immediately had Grace set up a meeting. Off the books, far from the office. They met at Harlow Green Park that Saturday afternoon, in a quiet spot by the West Fountain. Grace kept a respectful distance. Evelyn wore a simple wool coat, collar turned up, her hair pulled back low. In person, she looked smaller than her press photos. Isaac's son Eli played on the swings at the playground edge. Isaac stood up as she approached, offering his hand. She shook it. "You want to discuss Jason Holt?" she said. "It wasn't a question. I want to know if you already knew what he was up to," Isaac replied. That wasn't a question either, and Evelyn deeply respected his blunt honesty. She gave him the hard truth without hesitation. She knew about the illegal wire transfers, had known for 6 weeks. She was quietly building a legal case with outside lawyers because moving too fast was dangerous. Jason had the administrative access and backup plans to easily redirect the blame. He could pin the evidence trail on the department heads who blindly countersigned, authorizing the massive transfers without understanding the paperwork. She needed an honest outsider, someone whose integrity Jason couldn't buy, edit, or destroy from within. Isaac just listened. Evelyn explained. The money came from the Children's Health Initiative, $47,200,000 across 11 hospitals over 18 months. Isaac glanced toward the swings, watching Eli's little feet kick up at the sky. St. Albans Medical Center, he muttered softly. The pediatric ward. Yes, Evelyn replied, studying his face closely. He didn't look angry. You and I know that look. A man absorbing a dark truth he prayed wasn't real. Then she told him the rest. She confessed about the settlement, the company car, and signing that legal document without ever asking the victim's name. She spoke the cold facts plainly, refusing to soften them. He deserved that absolute respect. A heavy silence stretched between them for a while. Eli suddenly ran over from the swings, totally breathless, holding up a fresh drawing in his little notebook. Dad, the swing is stuck on one side. I'll fix it in a minute, buddy, Isaac said. He walked his son back to the swings, crouched down, checked the tangled chain, and freed it with 2 quick wrist turns. He gave the swing a soft push. Then he returned, sitting back down on the park bench directly across from Evelyn. What do you need from me? He asked quietly. She needed a sworn, notarized statement detailing exactly what his honest eyes saw, date and time. Where he found the luxury bag, the hidden items visible through the zipper, and the exact text he read. His integrity opened the door. No financial stake, no foundation ties, and completely unrelated to everyone involved in the fraud. Jason had already built up a legal defense claiming absolutely no outside witness even existed in this case. Isaac's testimony would completely destroy that lie before Jason could ever use it. One honest choice. Isaac nodded once and agreed to help. She asked if he wanted to know why she needed him, considering everything her foundation did to his family, why he'd ever choose to protect her. Isaac thought about her question for a moment. He finally said, because it's not about your massive foundation. It's about 11 hospitals, and the kids inside them. I didn't need you to be flawless. I just needed you to try making it right. Evelyn Cross hadn't shed a tear in front of anyone for 3 long years. She didn't break down right then either, but her silence hung heavy, lasting just a heartbeat too long. Nailing down Isaac's official statement took 3 full days with the foundation's expensive outside lawyers. Picture him there. Isaac sitting in that polished law firm conference room on a Tuesday afternoon. His little boy Eli sat right beside him snacking on crackers, while Isaac answered every question straight. Just raw honesty. He simply detailed exactly what he witnessed, starting with where that designer bag sat, the exact time he spotted it, and how those hidden papers peeked out from the shifted zipper. The exact numbers and the handwritten notes on that very first page. He didn't guess anyone's motives. He never once tried to judge Jason Holt's shady actions. Pure integrity. He only described exactly what sat before him. They only asked him for the truth, and he delivered it without holding anything back. Jason Holt saw this coming, though. 2 days before the board met, Holt's expensive lawyers filed an early objection, claiming that Isaac's testimony was some unlawful review of private documents by an outsider. Their legal argument was sharp, heavily detailed, and definitely would have caused massive procedural headaches if that were Jason Holt's only big problem that particular morning. It definitely wasn't. The sudden Cross-Meridian Foundation emergency board meeting kicked off right at 9 in the morning, up the 38th floor, inside a massive glass boardroom where you could stare out at 3 bridges and the cold gray river below. 12 powerful voting board members took their seats around that massive table. Jason Holt sat confidently on the left side, heavily guarded by his pricey legal team. Looking sharp and perfectly calm, he projected the smug energy of a billionaire who thought his money could still fix this. Isaac took the witness chair down at the near end of that massive mahogany table. He wore that exact same simple white shirt. Empty hands, just the truth. Jason's lawyer attacked immediately. With respect to the board, the witness sitting before you today possesses 0 relevant professional credentials, no background in financial accounting, and absolutely no basis for interpreting whatever he claims he read. His testimony should be completely dismissed accordingly. Honesty doesn't flinch. Isaac just shifted toward the lawyer and spoke with total calm. I don't need fancy financial credentials to read a person's name and a number. I just need to know how to read. A stunned silence fell over that powerful boardroom table. Down at the far end, a wealthy board member slowly lowered his expensive pen. Let's look at what happened next. Evelyn Cross stood up and presented the hard evidence. First up, a massive internal audit report, fully authenticated and stamped by an outside accounting firm. Second, the hard logs of all 47 transfer authorizations made over an 18-month stretch. Every single document stamped with Jason's personal digital signature, plus a secondary approval code generated exclusively from his own private administrative login. And third, the backup server's archived email. Jason Holt sent that exact message to a shady outside broker just 48 hours before Isaac carried that lost bag back into the lobby. The subject line simply read, "Processing review." But that final chilling sentence demanded, "Destroy all those file copies before Friday." One honest choice broke his entire scheme. The board chairman dropped that printed email right in front of Jason. Jason sat frozen. His high-priced lawyer opened his mouth to object, choked on the words, and went totally silent. Then the board chair quietly asked, "You and I are seeing it unfold." Jason stepped out while auditors began their formal review. Two massive building security guards planted themselves firmly right beside the big conference room door. Jason marched down the long table toward the exit. He marched right past Isaac's chair, refusing to even look his way. Not a single word. He walked out and the heavy door clicked shut behind him. By noon, the charity scandal was dominating every news channel. The biggest headline screamed, "Cross Meridian executive charged in $47 million fund embezzlement." By sundown, the exact number of impacted hospitals was confirmed. 11 pediatric programs across the entire city. 3 of them had already slashed treatment capacity for uninsured kids during the previous fiscal year, blaming what they thought were massive budget shortfalls from the foundation. Let's follow the money together. It vanished through hidden offshore accounts. The corporate fraud had been running for 18 long months. Isaac's name hit the morning papers long before he ever realized. A reporter tracked him down at the park next morning. He was just quietly fixing the latch on a storage box. He calmly stated he had nothing to add beyond the existing public record. The reporter pushed further, asking if he felt like a hero. He paused, then said he merely returned someone's lost bag and told the honest truth when they asked. Then he picked up his tools and went back to work. That next afternoon, Eli's teacher showed her class the news article. She gently asked Eli if the man in the photo was his dad. Eli nodded yes, then casually went right back to coloring the water cycle diagram she had drawn. But later that night, looking over his soup at the kitchen table, he finally spoke. "You did the right thing, didn't you, Dad?" "It wasn't really a question," Isaac replied. "I didn't do the wrong thing." That's usually enough. Billionaire Evelyn Cross issued her public statement that day. She announced an immediate overhaul of the foundation's entire board of directors. A complete independent audit of all operational accounts spanning 5 long years. Plus, total financial restoration for the Children's Health Initiative program. All $47 million. Returned to those 11 hospitals in 90 days, along with an extra allocation to cover treatment gaps caused by the missing money. One of those 11 restored programs was the Family Support Fund at St. Albans Medical Center, where Jason had quietly drained $3.2 million. That exact program had quietly covered a portion of Diana Ward's final medical bills. A week after the board meeting, Evelyn Cross returned to the park again. Grace Adler was not beside her. She wore a simple gray coat and walked straight through the east gate around 4 p.m., framed by low golden sunlight and those almost entirely bare elm trees. Isaac was carefully repainting the number above the bench on the east path, bench number 7, using a tiny brush and some white trim paint. Hearing her footsteps, he turned, gave a single nod, and went back to work. He finished the very last stroke before putting his brush down. She waited. You and I know she had learned something profound. She never expected a broke man's honest choice. Isaac always gave people the quiet respect to speak their truth, never rushing to fill the wealthy silence. "I signed a blind document 2 years ago," she confessed, "a basic settlement summary. That case file crossed my desk from Jason's corporate office. The victim was stripped down to just 2 cold initials." She hesitated, and I never bothered asking for the real name. "I had 8 meetings that morning. I blindly signed your family's fate and just moved on to the next." Isaac calmly rested his worn brush across the metal paint can. "When your assistant sent me that lost bag," she continued, "I finally read the whole police report, every single page." Her voice stayed perfectly steady, but the billionaire was struggling. I had zero clue a child was hurt or that you were still scraping by in this city. I didn't know the human cost. I should have checked before I blindly sealed a legal document meant to close out your family's darkest chapter." Isaac remained completely silent. "I really don't know how to apologize for corporate damage that can't be undone," she admitted. "And I fully know my empty words today won't fix anything. But you deserve this truth, even if my wealth can't make it right anymore." He studied her face for a long second. He finally spoke. "I brought that luxury bag back before I knew who you were, before learning about your charity, the accident, before all this mess. I returned it simply because it wasn't mine." He picked the paintbrush back up, turning it slowly between his rough, calloused fingers. "I'm not sharing my side just to make you feel okay. I'm telling you so you see why I'm still standing here talking, instead of just walking away. This was never about a payout. Stick with me here." Across the playground, little Eli came, sprinting, hugging a cheap notebook tight, totally out of breath. He braked right in front of the billionaire, proudly holding the sketchbook out. The page revealed a messy drawing in bright blue and orange crayon, a simple tree, a tiny home, and 3 happy people in a yard. "That's our special park," Eli beamed. Evelyn gently took the notebook, staring at the innocent drawing for a long, quiet moment. Her trembling hands stayed perfectly still before she finally handed it back. Then she finally asked the working man the one big question she came for. She asked what he desperately needed. Not for his own bank account, she quickly clarified. She already knew exactly what a man of integrity would say. She wanted to know what truly mattered. He didn't demand a high-paying job. He never asked for massive wealth, fame, or his name plastered on a fancy building. He said, "Your charity's health fund, stop letting it just be a meaningless corporate plaque. There are countless kids here whose parents are out there forced to make the exact same brutal choices I make every week, and they don't always have my kind of luck. Take those 11 charity programs and make them entirely permanent. Make the money a hard rule, not a handout." She promised she would. He actually believed her. 3 entire months passed by. Leaves slowly returned to the tall elm trees. You could see fresh green touching the bare park branches by early March. You know the feeling well. Small, honest choices quietly take root until suddenly by next Tuesday true change is simply there. Isaac Ward was still quietly working at Harlow Green Park. His humble work uniform was still badly faded right at the shoulder. Let me tell you something. His boots were the exact same pair he scored 2 years back from that Mallory Street discount spot. By February, he finally earned that shift supervisor title for the Eastern Maintenance Zone. It wasn't a fancy payout for everything that went down last fall. He simply worked hard, proved his worth, and the older guy finally stepped down. That modest bump in pay, he threw it straight into a brand new savings account for Eli. One morning, a fresh spiral notebook mysteriously turned up on the concrete step near the maintenance shed, right where Eli hung out every afternoon. It was top-quality, thick paper wrapped in a solid forest green cover. Inside the front cover, tiny, careful handwriting spelled out a simple message, "For the kid who draws the park." No name attached. Eli had absolutely no clue who dropped it off. He took it without any big fuss. Flipped right to page 1 and started sketching the duck pond near the south gates. Isaac just stood there in the shed doorway watching his boy in silence. Later that evening, as his shift wound down, Isaac took a seat on bench 7. That freshly painted white number on the backrest stood out sharp and clear, glowing slightly as the late afternoon sun faded. Nobody else was around, just him sitting. Eli plopped down next to him, driving his blue toy car across the old wooden slats. He kept humming that quiet little engine noise he always made. "Dad," Eli murmured after a bit. "Yeah." "Why did you pick up that bag?" Isaac paused, thinking it over. He stared out at the stragglers finishing their evening stroll on the distant trail. 2 people walking a dog, some older guy sporting a bright red cap. Because it didn't belong there without someone. Eli weighed this. That is the whole reason. That's the entire reason. Down the east path, those new LED lights Isaac put in last spring started snapping on, one after another as the dusk settled in. They swapped out those awful old sodium bulbs that always buzzed when it froze. Now they fired up perfectly, zero hesitation. That is exactly how honest labor looks. You do it right and it just reliably works. Isaac leaned against the bench, letting that warm glow wash over the two of them. Eli parked his blue car flat against the wood. He gazed up, watching the first lamp glow, followed by the second, and then the third. Here is what we all learn eventually. Doing the right thing rarely feels grand. No swelling music, no cheering crowds, no big announcements. It is just that quiet split second where you notice something out of place. And in that flash, you choose exactly what kind of human you want to be. You take action. Then you head home, whip up some French toast, lock the front door, and watch your little boy peacefully sleep. Isaac Ward simply spotted a lost bag on a park bench. He made sure it got back to its rightful owner. He spoke up and told the truth, even when being honest carried a heavy price. He never demanded a single favor back, because getting paid was completely beside the point. And in a city where $47 million was quietly stolen from kids who needed it most, one single guy in a faded blue uniform absolutely refused to turn a blind eye. Not because he felt especially heroic. Not because he had that fearless bravery you read about in fairy tales. The bag wasn't his, and maybe you and I can agree that really was the whole reason.